E sejam bem-vindos, caros amigos, a uma edição especialíssima. Isto não é bem uma edição, mas esta entrevista com uma antiga atleta da WWE, Kaitlyn, hoje em dia denominada, de acordo com o seu nome natural, Celeste Bonin. Celeste, how are you? It's very nice to have you here and thank you for accepting this invite.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Portuguese is such a beautiful language.
I know, and
Uh,
the thing that I was talking to you just a bit ago was that Celeste is actually a very Portuguese name, and you said just a bit ago that you actually have some affinity with Portugal. So please elaborate.
yeah. So when I was with WWE, we toured all over the world, and when we would do these European tours, we would essentially just be in one city per day, and then we're on to the next show. But Portugal, I have like a list of places that I intended to go back to and spend more time with, and Portugal is probably within the top five of that list. I had the opportunity, and I didn't always get this opportunity when I
Hmm.
was on these tours because it was just like so fast paced. But I got to walk around, have coffee, and it was just such a wonderful experience. The people, just visually, it was so beautiful. It was, I don't know how the weather is all the time there, but it was like a perfect day in terms of the weather. Like, so I've always wanted to go back and have a more expansive experience in
Yeah, yeah.
Portugal. I really resonated with it.
Portugal is really, I mean, if I may say so myself as a Portuguese person, but it really is a great country to live in. And the weather here, I mean, it's kind of the definition of weather. You know, you have winters that are wintry. It's not, we don't have snow, not in Lisbon at least. We have a region up north that's called Serra da Estrela, and there's plenty of snow there, especially over the winter time. But then summers are very summery as well, and you get to enjoy Lisbon and Cascais and all the beaches, and then further south. So in Algarve, have you ever heard of Algarve?
Mm-mm.
Okay, so that's I mean there's a whole plethora of beaches to go to, and I'm sure you'll enjoy one of them if at any time you decide that you want to come and visit Portugal just as a person as a tourist. I mean I think you're really going to enjoy this.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, it's the way you're describing it, it's got a little bit of everything, kind of like any time of the year you go, you can enjoy it. What's the best time of year to go?
The best time, I mean, definitely, I'm more of a spring guy. I definitely love summer too, but spring is just kind of that middle ground, right? Like it is right now, where it's nice, it's warm, it's good outside, but it's not too hot, and it's definitely not cold, you know? So
Yeah.
if you fit well in that kind of middle ground between one and the other, springtime is absolutely the most perfect time to visit Portugal.
Good to know.
So we actually met previously. We met around 2012 at WrestleMania Access 28, and I actually have a picture with you that I took, and I had to send it to you. Obviously, like as my pitch to Celeste, would you please, concede this interview to me? You're very nice, and thank you again. But I actually took that picture. Well, we had that picture taken by the professional photographers at Access, right, by WWE, and I look at that picture is just so cool because it reminds me of that time when I was there and obviously enjoying the event and the festivities. But the minute I saw you, having only known you from television and seeing right there, I just got that impression. She seems so nice. I don't know if people
So,
tell you that.
so wait, 2012 was in Miami. Was in
Yes.
Miami, right? Yeah, that was I was only with the company for, I think I only experienced three WrestleManias.
Yeah.
But Miami was so fun. I mean, Miami is such a cool city, but yeah, that was like a really cool access for me because I flew my brother. I'm from Houston, Texas, and my family's here, and so I
Oh,
flew my
cool.
brother in, and he and I are very close, and so he got to experience like all the cool behind the scenes, backstage stuff. So that was like a very memorable access for me, and it was. So when I got my contract, it was 2010. It was already past WrestleMania. It was like the going into the fall of 2010. And so my first WrestleMania experience was in Atlanta, and it
Yeah.
was like so insane. I had just it was a few months after I had won NXT, and I was still just trying to find my footing and figure out the world of pro wrestling because I was so
Exactly.
new to everything. And so by the time that that WrestleMania came around, I was a little bit more comfortable with just everything in the world of pro wrestling. And so it was. And I had also started to do a little bit more on TV, and so people were able to recognize me, know who I was, and so it was like the opportunity to have. I think it was probably one of my first major experiences of like really interacting with fans because access is, we were speaking to being able to experience the energy of a culture. I think it might have been
Definitely.
before we were recording, but
Yes.
and so when you get to go into these like super high energy experiences where fans are so excited, it's the biggest event of the year, and it's such a electric experience. And then to also have the opportunity to intimately connect with people, have a short little conversation, like that was like my first real experience to do that. And I do get that a lot. A lot of times, even though I've been gone from the company for more than 10 years, I do quite a few appearances, and, I'll get booked for WrestleMania and WrestleCon and stuff, even now. And a lot of the feedback I get from fans is that like I'm kind of just, well, I think it's like down to earth or whatever. And to me, it's like when I started my career, I was a last minute replacement on NXT. I had like 5 days to prepare. I didn't have any wrestling experience. I had just gotten my contract. And so I never really like developed a character. Yes, Kaitlyn was my character. I got that
Yes.
day, then that I got that name the day I debuted. And so I never, the way that I looked at it and interacted with my career there was never, it was just me. I'm Kaitlyn. Like I was just figuring out who she was. She was just an extension of who I really am. And so it was very easy for me to interact and connect with fans in these experiences because it was just me. Even though I'm Celeste, I'm Kaitlyn too. Like, because one of the things that you could see it as a pro or a con of not having experience and time to develop a character, I was just me.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like there is not a real big difference between Caitlyn and who I am in real life.
I think you had I mean, we're going to address it as character just because it had a name, right? Because it was Caitlyn. But you as a performer, I'll just sum it up like that. You had such a presence because I remember even the feud that you had with the AJ Lee and the whole contract signing and the way you pushed her against the corner with I thought I was watching that again on YouTube just a few days ago. I was like, that's so brilliant because the table was just kind of across the ring in a diagonal, and she was sitting in a certain way. You just push her, and it was crazy. But the thing that stood out to me the most was just how intense you were, and
Yeah.
your look and your physicality. And I thought that was amazing because back then, I mean, these days we're used to seeing like definitely athletic female superstars, and some of them like Jade Cargill or Rhea Ripley. I mean, they're on the strong side. But back then, it wasn't that usual to see like a female superstar that had that kind of not only physique but physicality. I mean, you were just I don't know if it's a Texan thing or whatever, but you just
Something
had
in the water.
something in the water, definitely. But you definitely had that kind of presence, and that's something about you, which is what I think is one of the examples of the it factor, like they say so much,
Mhm.
right? And you definitely had something that made you watch. And when you hit a spear, I mean, look out Roman Reigns, because that spear of yours was nasty. I mean, that was a Goldberg-like spear. And so that
Yes.
was crazy. I mean, my question is, what brought on that physicality? Was it just something that you just kind of turned on, or is just something that's just part of you and athletically that's how you're built? Tell me about it.
So, first of all, thank you. So that contract signing was so cool. Just the segment within itself, because that was the first ever women's contract signing in WWE. That was literally the
Oh,
first one that they had done for women. And AJ and I, and during that time of our career, during that feud, we did a lot of things that were like really pushing the envelope, pushing the
yeah,
edge of like, and because we had, her, she has, the difference between her and I is I got hired. I was athletic. I had the look, I had the drive, and so I got a contract, and then I was kind of thrown into the world of professional wrestling.
yeah,
She had wanted the Divas title her entire life, right? So that was the difference in our backgrounds, but we we came up together. And it was nice because we were friends, so we could support each other because it was not an easy endeavor, especially during that time for women's wrestling. And so we had worked so hard on screen and behind the scenes to elevate ourselves, to make to create story that people really cared about. And because we were so emotionally invested in doing something like that, to pushing the boundaries, getting more time, getting more trust in our creative process. um, and so it was really cool just in general to have that moment as the first women's contract signing. But I think one thing that really helped me, number one, get a contract, and number two, do some really cool stuff with my career, even though it was a little bit short lived, it was a little bit less than 4 years that I was there, is that it was like a combination of a few things. I had been an athlete my entire life. I played soccer, ran track, was on varsity. I played a lot of sports in
Yeah.
high school. And then I also had a coach, a track coach, when I was in my freshman year of high school. And this is before social media. This is before Facebook, Instagram. I think MySpace might have been around
Yeah.
around that time. So, and I say this because this coach, her name was Yolanda Beasley. She was the first woman I had ever seen in my life that was very muscular. She had a stunning physique and she was lean. And I had never seen anyone that looked like her before. And I looked up to her because she was my coach and she had a lot of qualities that I admired, that I hadn't really seen in anybody else before. And her physique was so impressive. And so she took me under her wing and started mentoring me. She taught me how to lift weights. She would sometimes take me to Gold's Gym after school to train me because I was so hungry for the knowledge that she had. And through that mentorship, and of course, I learned, I had other mentors, and I had a lot of coaches as I got further into high school that helped me develop my knowledge and understanding of the physical body, building strength, building muscle. But she was the one that really helped me understand discipline and drive and what it took to build a physique like
Yeah.
that. And so that was, and I think that was something that I was born with, that she helped me develop, look at, because she had that within her, and that part of me wanted to be expressed, and she helped me kind of nurture that part of me. And I mentioned, and this is, I've done a ton of interviews about this, like I literally had zero wrestling experience. And when I tried out, I got a contract because I I left it all out there, even though I didn't know what I was doing in the tryout. I was very athletically capable, and my mindset was strong, even though I
Yeah.
didn't know anything about wrestling. I ended up wrestling like my first matches on live television during NXT. But something that really helped me, even though I was very rough around the edges, was that discipline that I had started to develop, and that mental fortitude very early on, in my very formative teenage years. And so I think that part of me, plus the recognition of what a unbelievably profoundly big opportunity I had to be on this global platform, um, to make a name for myself, to create a legacy. And even though I didn't really know who I was and what my message was, what I really stood for, I was in my early 20s, and nobody really knows that about
Exactly.
themselves then, right? Your 20s are so
We're all
experimental when
figuring
you're,
out stuff when
yeah,
we're in 20s.
yeah. Yes. So I didn't really have that awareness of myself then, but I had those raw ingredients of like, I know I have something special. I'm willing to do what it takes. I'm willing to learn. I'm willing to, put it all out there. And because I had been used to doing that as an athlete. And I don't have children of my own. My boyfriend has a daughter, and she's turning 12 next month. And anytime I'm around, specifically like early teenagers, um, anytime I have the opportunity to talk to them about sports, whether they are super athletically inclined or they don't know, or maybe they're not interested in, is integrating some sort of sport into your life to develop your character as a person is
Absolutely.
so powerful. Because what I learned then, and the things that it helped me really actually do well in my career, were created through my understanding of pushing yourself, teamwork, not giving up, you get bruised and hurt a little bit and you just get back up, so it kind of gave me this like relentless mindset. And with that combined with this like realization of, oh my gosh, this is such a profound opportunity, it helped me like really unleash that part of myself to be able to just, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to give it everything I have, because what do I have to lose, was kind of my mentality most of the
And it just came across as something that you felt, regardless of what you're doing, your performance. It just, I think that's the key thing that really stands out with the top performers is, they're feeling something. And when they're
time.
feeling something and then they putting it across, I mean, then you can generate that emotional investment that the fans need to believe in you. And let's not forget, I mean, it's kind of hidden away and tucked away behind what we're talking about. But especially from the time that you were there from 2010 to 2014, is that right?
Yes.
It was no small feat to stand out as a female superstar in the WWE back then, because
hmm
from 2012 to 2016, it was 4 years until the Divas Championship was then renamed the WWE Women's Championship. So you were still kind of, you maybe you didn't know this back then, but you were still grinding it out in a time that women were just still trying to get quality matches, being regarded as serious performers, just be respected in the locker room and by fans. So you and AJ, and there's a reason why people call AJ like kind of the pioneer of the women's evolution. Uh, there's a reason why superstars like yourselves actually stood out. I mean, because you just had
Mm.
it. You had that authentic quality and that drive to just perform and just do your best and really captivate the fans. I certainly was captivated. So I mean, kudos to you and AJ as two small examples for really bringing out the best in the women's evolution back then already.
I really love the way that you put that. It's clear that you understand kind of like the deeper levels at play of professional wrestling or any type of athletic performance. It's like you can be the best technical wrestler in the world, which I was not. And
And
you can be
that's
the most
fine. I mean,
refined and
look at
polished.
Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan was not the best
Yes.
technical wrestler in the world, but he was an amazing storyteller.
Yeah. When you have the ability to understand energy and emotions, and you're able to kind of allow yourself to be guided by that in a way, it takes a lot of trust in yourself and in
Yeah.
your felt sensations to do that. But that really is what gives someone that star quality. It's like they're able to be, they're good at their craft. They're also able to be guided by the influences of the electricity of a crowd and human emotion. Um, I think with any type of like evolution, like a significant evolution in anything, because everything's always evolving. But when you look at a lot of different things like the women's wrestling evolution, there's usually like a catalyst. There's
Yeah.
something that sparks like a big change, and it kind of becomes ignited, and then people become inspired, and they're on board with it. Um, for me, my like the part that I played in that started internally because I didn't feel like I knew who I was as a performer, not just because I didn't have the experience to develop myself as a performer, but because I saw myself as something so unique. I wasn't like the model type, but I did have qualities. Like I knew, I know that I'm beautiful and that there's that's to me that are physically attractive and feminine, but there was this other part of me that's like, I'm a beast, like I'm like this
Exactly.
warrior, I'm this fighter. But I wasn't quite Kelly and I wasn't quite Beth Phoenix. I was this, and that's where I coined that term hybrid diva, because that's how I felt like maybe it's my job. And I can only say this now looking back, like then I probably could not articulate this, like I was just kind of like,
You were still maturing.
trying to, yeah, and I was kind of just being guided by this. Like, I think it was kind of just an intuitive knowing. But I was like, I felt like I was this emergence of these two very significant archetypes of women that were on the roster at the time. Is either you're Vince's favorite because you're like the Barbie doll, gorgeous, stunning model, or you're like like a super big powerhouse, and you only fit in one of these two categories. And I'm like, I'm a little bit of both. Um, and so there was a lot of trepidation in terms of like what I wanted to do creatively, how I wanted to develop my wrestling style. Um, So I pulled a lot of that from my athletic background of like, well, I know I'm explosive, I'm very fast, I know I'm strong. And there's also these other things that I can play on because of my physical attributes. But that was kind of the spark for me of like I feel, and this is true for AJ too. AJ was very different. She was not the average diva. And I think that was what both of us had in common in our unique ways. And so I think that that kind of new and interesting type of diva or type of women's wrestler was being born through our rivalry. At first our friendship, and then our rivalry on television, and we brought that out in each other. And I'll say this, during that time there was a lot of fear. I always felt more pressure and fear backstage than I ever felt on camera, because there were so many expectations of who
Yeah,
you had to be and playing the game and all these things and all these unwritten rules. And felt very much like a loner in that regard. Number one, because a lot of people in the locker room didn't feel like I deserved to be there, because I hadn't gotten this once in a lifetime opportunity to get put on TV, and then I won NXT and I got put on the main roster. So I constantly felt this pressure of needing to almost prove myself that I deserved to be there. And that didn't exist when I was in the ring. So that was like an extra pressure that I felt. But in general, the culture of not just the talent, but the writers and the creative people, there was this level of fear that if you experimented too much with your creative expression, you could get fired or you would lose your position. And so,
exactly.
um, and in general for the women, like, and you spoke to this, there wasn't a lot of TV time. Like we had 5 minutes with entrances most out of a 2 hour or a 3 hour show. And so there was a lot of fear in terms of like thinking there. And so the more success her and I had together in our feud, and also individually in our careers, the more confidence we had to continue to try to push the envelope, do a little bit like, this hasn't been done before, or let's try doing something this way versus the way it's always been done. And I think that that resonated with a lot of people. Most people have a part of them that feels very not seen, heard, or recognized by other people, like that part that we kind of sometimes hide because of fear of rejection or judgment or whatever. And everybody has that thing, like that aspect of themselves. And so I think people really loved us in our feud and who we were as characters so much because we played on that. Like this is kind of the part that a lot of things around me are telling me to suppress because it's not this and it's not that, but like maybe this is the thing. And I think a lot of people resonate with that emotionally, of like they felt very seen through our storyline and the way that we showed up as performers. Um, and and so it's interesting because it wasn't any one thing. It was like it
This
was just
amalgamation of factors, right?
yeah, exactly.
And I think the thing that stands out with I'll name you as an example, and I think you just, I mean, you coined it perfectly, because indeed, as far as the build, you were just different than the rest of the divas back then. But then you had the cute face. Yeah, I mean, you're beautiful, right? You're a beautiful woman to look at. You're pretty, and then you're relatable, and then, like I said, I mean, my first impression was she seems so nice, but at the same time, it's like, okay, but maybe not push it too much. You don't know what you can, right? This works on a psychological level. Just now, I was with a dear friend of mine. She's an athlete. She's been an athlete her whole life. She's like the sweetest person you'll ever meet. But then she's just, and that's why I realized this. She's just fierce. And you know that
Mm,
when the time comes that fierceness needs to come out, oh, it does come out. You know, and those and I think that's a very particular kind of breed, because
mm,
it really, like you said, like the hybrid diva, it really amalgamates like the softness and the character and the beauty of the person, right? That translates in how you look from the neck up, but then from the neck down and in your head, it's just like, but you can be a bomb. I mean, you can
yeah.
just spear the hell out of somebody else, and it's believable and it pulls you in. So I think that's a really cool example of, there's sometimes there are people that are just kind of right there in the radar, but then the timing just isn't right. And then people don't realize what they've got just in front of them, right there, right then, because they're just conditioned to something else. You know, we know that over the years, WWE, as everything else, like you just said, has mutated, has evolved, and we certainly can see a lot more female superstars these days that are just equally as capable in the ring as some of the standouts back then, you yourself included. But I think it also it required the kind of maturation process for us to be able to be here in 2026 and look at the landscape of the female superstars, and it is stacked. NXT, Raw, SmackDown, even in Mexico, AAA that WWE also owns. You have so much female talent these days. I mean, it's like the expression goes, more than you can shake a stick at, right? And you have so many and many superstars, and definitely, I mean, you took a part in doing that, in AGLE as well, and it was just love to the course of the wrestling business to evolve, to then go back and realize, oh, look at this. I mean, we already had something there. And AGLE just came back, right? I mean, she did a little run, but it was still
Mhm.
AGLE. People still related to AGLE. And I think that really speaks volumes to the character, to the superstar, and to the performer, most of all.
Yeah, definitely. You know what's so cool is like there there's a lot of uh, like with something that's really big like professional wrestling or like the music industry or cinema, like you always see the way that we're evolving as a society reflected in these major expressions, right? So, um, w- with wrestling, women's wrestling, what you're speaking to, what comes to my mind is like, is this, it's like a deeper ownership of who you are as a performer. And a lot of that comes from the trust of creative and the people that are writing the contracts and who are
Sure.
in charge of deciding who goes on television. um, but I think that that also, like going back to that theme of like this the change and the spark happening within, I think a lot of the women that are front and center right now, and even the up and coming women, the women that are really like doing amazing stuff on television and kind of redefining the standard of not just female wrestlers, but women in general. They have this deeper sense of who they are and that self trust to express themselves in such a bold way. They can be this and they can be that.
Yeah.
And I think that that's just a reflection of how we are evolving as a society, as people in general. Like there's this deeper sense of like you can see it on social media. Um, like we went through this time where um, everything was so curated. Like if you had a business or a personal brand on social media, like let's say Instagram or YouTube, there was like a season or let's say like a decade of everything needed to be very well edited, just presented
Yes.
so
Almost
professionally. It had to,
overproduced at some point.
hmm and now there's this big pendulum swing of people, and also I think within that was like the emergence of AI and everything being so curated by AI, and so now there's this like thirst and hunger for that people have for a much more human experience, something that's much more raw and expressive and less refined, and people feel I think alive when they see and feel performances like that. And so going back to just the scope of female wrestling, I think in the past, like there would be fear around like not maybe being seen as too aggressive or too like an animal, and like you're not like in this box of like a beautiful woman and she's this and she's that. So I think the point that I'm getting at is that the what we're seeing in women's wrestling and what we're seeing on social media is this deeper sense of self-authority and trust in like who you really are. And my journey from the world of sports and then bodybuilding and then professional wrestling and then entrepreneurship, building a personal brand, all the things that I'm doing, When I look back at that journey, it's the same thing. Like there was not a lot of self-confidence, not a lot of self-trust, not wanting to step outside of these lines, especially during my WWE career, wanting to,
Fit
really,
in.
yeah, yeah. And then what that created within me was a lot of angst, a lot of pain, a lot of mental health stuff, weight gain. And that's why I left my career. I had 2 years left on my second contract. I had kind of reached a breaking point. The pressure, the adrenaline, just the life of, that super high profile life, that being on television and everything that was happening behind the scenes and not really knowing how to process what I was experiencing, it came to a breaking point, and so I left because I didn't know what else to do. Because my it was physically, my body was expressing a lot of the pain and chaos I was experiencing internally, and so I left that career to figure my life out and to say, like, to really ask myself the more important questions, like, am I happy? What do I really want to do with my life? Does this feel good for me? And what will ultimately make me happy? And everybody goes on this journey, and mine was just very public. And so for a long time I felt like I had this massive opportunity, this global stage, and I didn't take it as far as I could have. I didn't create as big of an impact as I could have, or maybe my career would have lasted longer if I had more self-awareness or more tools to kind of process what I was going through. But that's with anything. Hindsight is
Yeah.
is
Hindsight is
2020, right?
2020, like they say, right? So right now, I want to delve into the second part of your career since wrestling. And then I want to know, because you are an entrepreneur, like you said, you came from the world of bodybuilding, you went through wrestling, and now you're very much in the fitness realm, and you have your project. You're going to tell me all about it. First, I want to know what actually brought that change. What made you leave WWE, and then what made you look at the landscape of what you could do in this fitness related area and go, I want to do that.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. So when I left my wrestling career, I there were some things that I needed to figure out for myself. I was just to kind of like a very tangible thing is at the end of my career when I asked for my release, I was 30 pounds heavier than when I was when I got hired. And it was stress, and it
Yeah.
was just so much dysregulation in my nervous system. Like, I was speaking to this in part one, but not really knowing how to process the experience that I was having. Um, Show business and
Sure.
just like so
Absolutely.
the
Absolutely.
travel and the stress on your body and yeah, so when I left, I knew I needed to figure some things out. I wanted to reinvent myself outside of a character, outside of Kaitlyn from WWE, and so I founded a women's clothing brand called Celestial Bodies within 6 months after I left wrestling, and I had that business for 7 years. It did very, very well. It was like kind of the era where Instagram was a totally different game. So 2016, 2017, my brand really exploded on social media. And then I had, if you or any of your listeners know anything about bodybuilding, I had Miss Bikini Olympia.
Okay.
Yeah, the first place and second place as my two of my top athletes. So I did very, very well in the fitness industry. And then I went through a divorce. I rebranded my business. And then around 2020, I ended up losing that business. It was kind of
Oh,
like a mix of how much the economy changed because of COVID. I didn't feel like it was fully aligned with what I wanted to do with my life anymore. And so during kind of the last few years of having Celestial Bodies, I started doing I was mentoring people. I was starting to do a little bit of coaching, and I was helping other creators build a personal brand like I had done and bring a product to market. And, I didn't know any of that stuff before, but after going through, kind of a 7 year learning period of figuring out what was working and, kind of not just building a company, but also building a powerful personal brand. So I was doing a little bit of coaching and mentorship. And then when Social Bodies completely closed, I went full, like, head on into coaching. And at that time, I was also going through a lot of significant changes. I had mentioned that after I left wrestling, I started to learn how to heal myself in these different ways, work on my mindset, work on my physical body, work on healing some things that had been present in my life for a very long time. We all have things that are developed in childhood that stay with us as adults until we learn how to those things,
Yeah. And so we
traumatic
can manage them,
experiences.
right?
Right. And so I was, about 7 years or so into that, I had tried therapy, working with different healers, learning different types of modalities, breath work, learning about fascia and energy work. And so a lot of the things that I was learning that were really helping me in my life are what I started to coach other people on. So I was essentially consulting and coaching, helping people. It was through because I have such a vast experience in the realm of fitness. It was mostly through working with their bodies, but it wasn't just about the physical result. It was about um, the mind, body, and energy, part of the whole self.
Yeah.
And so I really found this passion for coaching, and I learned how to speak. I learned how to create offers and services that were really helping people. I was hosting um, in-person experiences, retreats. I was doing group coaching, private coaching, and I actually hosted my first international retreat in Greece last year. I
Oh,
co-hosted
wow.
that with, yeah, it was such a wonderful experience. But it's interesting because I had this really cool wrestling career, and then I had a very successful clothing business, and then I stepped into the world of coaching. And for the first time in my career, when I stepped into coaching, I started to feel real purpose. I started to really feel like I was actually starting to answer the calling over my life, what I felt like I was born to do. And I was able to use a lot of the experience and wisdom that I gained through my television career in pro wrestling and my journey of entrepreneurship and building a personal brand. I was starting to being on camera, learning how to speak, So I started to integrate all the things I had learned through my professional career into my coaching. And then a few years ago, I kind of hit a wall, and I was experiencing a lot of physical pain, chronic pain. And in the beginning, I thought this was okay, this must be from, weightlifting, playing sports, and like professional wrestling. And the more that I started to discover about myself, I learned that um, a lot of the pain that I was experiencing in my body was emotional pain that was like stuck and stagnant in my connective tissue.
Hmm.
And your connective tissue is your fascia. And fascia is becoming more and more well known by more and more people. People are opening their minds to learning about fascia, which there's your nervous system runs through your fascia. And
Okay.
so the more that I learned about fascia, I became a certified fascia movement coach a few years ago. And I shifted my coaching to focus more on working with people through physical movement, posture, dynamic movement. And what I learned is that not only was I rewiring my nervous system, my subconscious mind, and reprogramming patterns that were created from traumatic things in my life, mostly from childhood and acute injuries and painful experiences in my life, relationship stuff. So I was rewiring myself, my subconscious mind, and I was teaching my clients how to do that as well. Um, and so that all of my career experience led me into what I'm doing now, which I feel is very much my body of work, like what I really am here to do in my lifetime. And so I am currently working on, and this is kind of like an evolution of my coaching. I'm working on building a brand. I have a business partner called Flexx with Celeste. Flexx with Celeste it's a subscription content channel where I'll be teaching flexibility, mobility, teaching people how to work with their fascia. And the beautiful thing about it is it's not just, so I teach people how to do it with no equipment, just learning how to cue different parts of their body with their awareness and
Hmm.
through movement. And the partnership I have is with the CEO of a luxury stretch brand called Castle Flex. And Castle Flex, they are a huge brand, like top 1% in Shopify. Like they're a really fast growing brand, and their products are patented. So there's nothing like it on the market. And so with their devices, they teach people how to unlock their entire posterior chain, which is where most chronic pain comes from: lower back, neck, tight hamstrings, like hips, all the things that most of us deal with on a daily basis. And we just look at as, okay, this is just part of getting older, which it doesn't have to be like that. And that's what I
Yeah.
learned through being able to heal through my chronic pain, working with my body, working with my fascia. And so in Flex with Celeste, I'll be teaching people how to unlock their body, reprogram their subconscious mind, change their state of of being, have more energy, access to vitality. And I'll also be teaching them how to use some of these patented devices. And it'll not only be these classes, but I'll also be sharing behind the scenes content, photo shoots, video stuff. And I'll also be doing very visually compelling meditations with sound engineered, like sound healing experiences. So what makes this really cool and very different is that it is all about wellness, yeah, elevating yourself, mind, body, energy, but it's also sexy. It's hot. And so that's a part of me that I have suppressed for a long time because I thought that no one would take me seriously as a coach. The way that I look is kind of the elephant in the room. And it kind of had been like for a long time in the coaching space. Like I wanted to be taken seriously for my mind and my knowledge and the things that I was teaching. But with Flex with Celeste, I get to kind of bring that part of myself alive again. So I get to pull this. I'm very blessed genetically with how I look, and I also
Mhm.
work on my physical body, and I take care of myself. And so I get to bring that part of myself forward as what is part of what makes Flex with Celeste so compelling and will keep people coming back for more because it's it's beautiful, it's hot, it's sexy, and it helps people connect to that part of them, and it's also helping them transform their body, mind, and energy. So I feel, I'm like obviously extremely passionate about this, and it feels like I'm like really allowing myself to express all of myself, and this is kind of mirroring what we were speaking to in part one about there being this big shift in people having this like deeper level of ownership of who they truly are and what they feel like they're here to do with their lives, because that's true for me. And I see a lot of creators kind of stepping into this energy now, that are teaching things that are different, that are,
Yeah,
that, that are like
out of the
new. And
box.
yes, yeah, exactly.
It's very interesting. I mean, the digital realm in which we all live in right now. I mean, everything is really so digital, right? I mean, here I am just across the ocean talking to you, right? And you're in the States, I'm in Portugal, and we're having this incredible real-time conversation. And it's not only that. I mean, obviously, as people just they mature over time and over the years, right? They mature, they find out more about themselves, they discover more about themselves, and they realize the things that they want to do, the things that they want to keep out, and whatever helps them move on past a certain time in their life, or just go ahead, right? Just go straight ahead and do the next thing. But I really I understand the kind of the core of the project of Flex with Celeste. It really seems like it really strikes literally it strikes a nerve, right? Because
Yeah.
it goes back to okay, so how can we mend this? How can we fix this? And then you adapt that to the digital age in which you can reach everybody. And it's such a powerful medium to be in. I mean, just not only the audiovisual medium through which we're connecting, but just the digital domain itself. And in that, I wanted to ask you, how has it been for you as an entrepreneur to just kind of literally step out of the limelight of WWE and going through all those things in your life, and then looking at digital and seeing, hey, this is something that I can probably invest my time and invest, my resources into. What was the starting project, and how high of a climb was it for you to reach this point where your current account on Instagram has 700,000 followers? So you built that from scratch, because we're still talking about Instagram back when it was just all about food pictures and everything else, right? And long are the times. I mean, those times are gone. But how has it been for you to adapt to this whole digital domain?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think just like with anything that is very powerful, there's good and bad, so there's a lot of people that struggle with relating to their primal self because they spend a lot of their time in the digital world online connecting, and so mm, my hope is that being able to use this technology, the internet, being able to reach people all around the world, because technology isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
Like it's continuing to evolve, it's continuing to help us um, create and build and put our magic and our skills and all that out into the world. But I think being able to use the platform to actually help people access their more primal selves is what it should be used for versus like the disconnection of that, right?
Yeah,
So
I agree.
so it's like using it in a smart way. And then also the way that I see trends like with the online world is people are really wanting, especially coming out of like the whole strange like COVID time where there was like a lot of self-isolation, that people are really craving a community and to be part of groups. And so I think creators who are doing something really unique and aligned with what they feel like is a calling of their life, and they're using a digital medium to get it out into the world, those creators that are creating like private communities are going to be highly, highly successful because that is what people are looking for. Even though it might be through a screen, you're still connecting with other people that want similar things, that are feeling similar ways where you can share your life experience and actually expand yourself and transform yourself through that. Um, and when I left WWE, I went through like a really big identity crisis of like, who am I without this, without WWE, and without this
And this
global
identity, right? This
platform?
whole
Yeah,
thing that was Kaitlyn.
yeah, yeah. And I struggled a lot too with like, will I ever do anything as big as that again? And so when I look back at my life, I see that like this is how I understand it now, is like that was kind of like a glimpse of what I am capable of, number one, as an individual, like getting to that place where, yes, I was very blessed for the opportunity, but then being able to rise to the occasion and to do what I did in that short period of time, and then to kind of fall from grace a little bit and kind of go back into a little bit more of a private world and reinvent myself and prepare myself, refine myself, educate myself, work on myself to then now what I feel like is a path with Flex with Celeste is to put myself back out there with the potentiality of being on a major major platform again. So, like you were saying, you can reach anybody in the world if you are operating in authenticity and integrity, and you have something that can truly help the world and help a lot of people and make impact. I think the sky's the limit. So I think that, these 10 or 12 years from the time that I was on television to what I'm doing now with Flex with Celeste, I was preparing myself for this next level of putting myself out there in a huge way. So my goal with that is to reach a lot of people, help a lot of people, build a massive community. Um, and to also do in-person experiences. My international retreat I held in Greece was definitely not the last time I'll do that. That was like the taste of what I want to do. So being able to hold live experiences around the world, and get people together, actually, in person, to create relationships with each other. When I was at that retreat, the women that I co-hosted this retreat, and there were 6 women that signed up, and it was a 7-day retreat in Greece. Everybody was from the United States. All the women that attended that experience did not know each other, and they're all like lifelong friends. Like they made lifelong friendships in those 7 days, and so it's just like the power of the digital world, and then using that to bring people actually together in these in-person experiences too. So that's a big part of my vision for Swiss Less as it grows, is to be doing some in-person stuff too and connecting with people around the world, and you know coming out of from behind the computer and getting to experience
Absolutely, which is
real
vital. I
in-person
think it's
things.
vital. Even more though, I mean, just kind of going back to the point of digital connection. I mean, it's great. It's absolutely these days it's kind of a tool that you can't live without, right? I mean, you need the internet, you need the digital connection, and everything is just facilitated through the internet. At the same time, it really heightens, like you were referring to just a little bit ago, it really heightens the importance of human connection on a more personal level, of people
Yes.
just being able to feel each other out, look each other in the eyes, hear each other's voices, be in a conversation, just be in the same space, cohabitate in that respect, and just enjoy the human experience as well. I think that is really the cornerstone to then developing the digital experience. Would you agree?
Yes. 100%. Yeah. So I think that anybody who's listening, who, whether they're interested in wrestling as a fan or somebody who wants to pursue it, or you know maybe your community, you have people, because you tend to attract like people that are similar to you when you know when you have an online platform, like the people that follow you, they resonate with you for a reason. Like there's a commonality. So you seem very connected to yourself. You have a lot of awareness. You understand these deeper aspects of performance, like within wrestling, what really makes like a compelling story, and it's the emotions and it's the connection to the people. So I assume that your audience are people that are very similar to you and understand that. So um, it seems like you are very much on kind of this edge of like creating content and experiences that are like more felt. They're more fulfilling on a deeper level. Like people feel like they're among friends, even if
Yes,
they, when they're watching your content or, in the comment section or whatever. Um, and that's really cool. The more that I come into this very authentic version of myself, creating the content I want to create, doing what I want to do in business and creating a legacy for myself, I find that I tend to attract more and more creators that are like me. And so if, you have these types of creators in your followership and your fan base, my advice, and not that I'm an expert on any of this, but someone being on a global platform and being in the public eye for pretty much all of my career, the more you can connect to the things that you are so highly passionate about, whether these are like hobbies or just things that you do privately in your own time, or they're things that you've developed in your career, the more that you can combine everything that you have done in your past, whether again it's career or just like kind of personal life stuff, the more that you can kind of connect the dots and create the through line to everything that has taught you and how has refined you. That is really where you find that sweet spot of what you really want to do with your life. Again, like whether it is like you have a business or you're a content creator, or it's like just something that brings you a lot of joy. If you can find that through line of everything that has made you who you are and really showed you who you want to be, and you can create that into some sort of community, product, service, message, like that is where you will, um, I think, find your center and find the things in your physical reality reflecting back to you that you are in alignment with, like whatever your spirituality is, whether religious, not religious, spiritual, whatever, that
sure.
you are kind of resonating in that frequency of like where you're meant to be, like purpose, right? So
Absolutely, absolutely.
that's kind of like the bigger theme for me, is like everything I'm doing right now that has that frequency and that vibration of like, this is what I feel I am meant to be doing. And because I have that sensation and that felt wisdom, or that confirmation, it's driving me to excellence. It's driving me to work harder than I've ever worked before, but also to recognize when I need rest and how to take care of
Absolutely.
myself,
I
and
think I
and
think go on, go on.
so that's, yeah, you got to go ahead.
I know I was just saying because I was inspired by the words and the really how well you were describing me too. Because what you see around me is like 30 plus years of being a fan, but not only a fan. It's been professionally speaking. I worked with, as I mentioned in the email that I sent you, I worked with the WWE as the translator for the shows here in Portugal, and that opened up like such a big, almost Pandora's box because all of a sudden here I am. I stumbled upon that opportunity back when I was trying to, in my career and back in my early 20s, figure out like, what do I want to do? Do I just want to translate? It just felt very limiting to me, although it pays the bills, obviously. But then it just felt like it wasn't entirely what I wanted to do. But then WWE stepped in and with its enormous toy box of opportunities, right? Because when you have you're working with audiovisual and television and audio and you're presenting, and all of a sudden I'm building myself through the years, like where I'm a presenter, I'm a host, I did a TV show, and all those things, and through that comes maturation. Through that comes that
Mhm.
realization of who I am, who I want to attract, and just really quickly going to what you were saying right now is I think the more of yourself you are, the faster it thins out the people that you don't want to be with or be too. You know, you just you just you're just you. I just try to be whole I try to be true to myself. I try to be fair, and I try to be to when I'm, working around WWE content, just be respectful of the fans and of the world. And I think those approaches really bring the best of, for me, in my tiny little niche, they bring the best of the fandom and of the conversation. And it's not about just the controversies and the discussions, the heated discussions in the comment box. It's just, okay, how can we connect? How can we look at this that we love? How can we look at the superstar that we love, like Kaitlyn, like Celeste, and look at them through a human eye? And I will always try
Hmm.
to humanize the experience of what we're seeing and just try to rationalize, like, does this make sense on a human level? And I think when people
Yes.
connect to that, it becomes much easier to then absorb everything else.
Yes. Love that.
So in that respect, I wanted to ask you, so if you're looking at Kaitlyn back in 2010 and you're looking at her through the lens of Celeste Bonin, and then your worlds apart, right? Celeste as Kaitlyn and Celeste now. And my question to you is, what would you tell Celeste from the Kaitlyn era?
It's a great question. When I'm faced with kind of questions like this or reflections, my first thought is that for, very new Caitlin, 16 years ago, would she be able to understand this? And probably not, but most great advice that I've gotten in my life. It took me years to really understand what it meant, right? So I would tell her, um, I don't know exactly the words that I would use, but it would definitely be something around having a level of self-trust in my creative expression, um, and to not take everything so seriously. Because for me, everything was like do or die. Like, oh my God, like I would put so much pressure on every decision I made, and whether it was going to get rejected or I would get made fun of on the internet, or, I would guide that version of myself to have more self-trust in my creative process as a performer and a creator in general. And I think that that version of me would have to really sit with that and be like, I don't really know what that means right now, but I can kind of understand it. And so I think that that would guide that version, that 2010 Caitlin version, on a journey of self discovery and self reflection. And like, because, I didn't really start to look internally until I was, early 30s. And so I think that that would have sparked an internal journey a lot faster back then. And I think that like younger people, like people that are in their early 20s now, have a little bit more wisdom. And I think it's because of how culture has changed, um, to look inside a little earlier than maybe I did. I'm going to be 40 this year, but that was my journey. But so I would really communicate to her that to trust myself more in my creative process as a performer and a creator. And the only way to do that would be to explore my internal landscape and to really ask myself like the bigger questions that I didn't know how to ask, and I was probably afraid to ask
And
them.
and and growth can be sometimes a tricky and complicated thing because when you're forced to look in the mirror and you're forced to look at yourself, sometimes you're faced with hard questions, right? And like you don't really necessarily have the answers to them, but that's also part of the maturing process, obviously.
I think so, one really big thing that I've learned um, is that when I have a problem or something that needs a solution or something that needs an answer, all I have to do is to continuously keep the question in my awareness and to just to stay open to insight, to realization, to revelation, to someone outside of me sharing something with me that I'm like, oh, that like puts all these pieces of the
Now it
puzzle
makes
together.
sense,
One,
right?
yeah, yeah. So it's like, it's patience and it's trust that like when you have these bigger questions, you know, 99.9% of the time, whether it's meditation or prayer or a mentor or an advisor, you're probably not going to get the answer right away. You have to remain open to, and having the eyes to see, the ears to hear, and a heart that understands a deeper level of wisdom. And so it's like patience and trust that eventually you will get the answer. Eventually you will have the understanding. But if you can
Definitely.
kind of release like that urgency and the control over having to know right now in the moment, like it makes life a lot more enjoyable.
And definitely in these times where everything is so fast paced, but more than everything, people just want everything right now. They can't wait. They're not patient. They haven't matured, or they haven't disciplined themselves to waiting just 5 more minutes, just 10 more
Yeah.
minutes. Just hold on, just that little extra hour, that little extra day, which can make a ton of difference depending on the situation. It can make a ton of difference. So I think
Yes.
definitely, I mean, I think in that respect, you're very much on the right track with Flexx with Celeste, because when helping to tap into what's going on inside and helping unleash and just let everything unravel and then just try to put it all back together. I think ultimately you end with Celeste Bonin in 2026. It's like an entrepreneur and someone who actually stepped out of the limelight of such a high profile, business and entertainment like WWE, and I think that's really cool. So really quickly, because before we run out of time, before Zoom sabotages our call again, I wanted to ask you really quickly, how has WWE shaped you professionally? If you can sum that up in like 2 minutes.
Yeah. God, I would not be who I am today without my experience in WWE. Learning how to, um, not just on camera, but how to present myself to the world in a way that represents a global brand, was like a crazy huge learning experience. Like we were always expected to dress in a way that represented the brand, like at the airport, even if it's 5 a.m., right? So I learned very early, that the way that I physically express myself, the way I hold myself, the way I walk, the way that I carry my body, my posture, my physical appearance is a representation of not just who I am, then my integrity, but also the brand that I represent. And then specifically being on camera and being on television, it created so much awareness of, um, how important, my face is, how important, so it's like I learned so fast in such a like crazy short time, really what matters. And like at the end of the day, we can hate it as much as we want, but like the way that we physically present ourselves is the first barrier to connecting with people. So it just really prepared me to be able to withstand and endure sometimes the difficulties of being in the public eye, and how to stay strong, connected to who I know myself to be and my integrity internally. So it's a lot about just like how to show up to life. I would not be who I am today without that experience.
I could most certainly delve into that myself, sharing that same experience with my connection and experience with WWE, because that in itself, I mean, we could go on for another 15 minutes just talking about that, because it
Yeah.
really is true. Our environment shapes us, and when our environment, and especially in business, is a certain way, and you're really kind of forced and sometimes helped into looking at that particular business and the way you are in life, like that's it. That's kind of the main frame.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Hmm.
the million-dollar question that I think every Kaitlyn fan wants to know right now, so we can finish the interview. And thanks again for acceding to the invitation. But I wanted to know: is there at any time in your mind the thought and the idea of possibly, if given the opportunity, to make a return, however short it may be?
100%. I am physically at a peak, mentally at a peak. I've never been more confident. I feel great. I'm very capable. So and it's funny, I actually would love, I'm kind of like, keeping this open in terms of like a manifestation spectrum. But I would love to come back and do some commentary, and then if that leads to coming into the ring for however long, I'd probably have to get a little practicing. So it's been a minute since I've been in the ring, but I just think that how much a lot of this conversation is about maturation and wisdom, and so I think I would have so much to offer in terms of um, the perspective of the commentators and how that can help tell a story of a performer. And then, I'm definitely open to getting back into the ring. Not a full time because I have I have this whole project I'm building now, but I do think that it would be excellent for my career. It would be so much fun. And this, the wrestling fan base is so loyal. Is
It is.
so loyal, so loyal.
Absolutely.
So I think it would be I've never been in a better place in my life to do something like that. So I'm very, very open to however the universe organizes and arranges that. But I would love to do something. I would love to come back for a little bit because you know, I'm a different person now, and I think I'm even more of a force in a lot of different ways.
I think I've had a wonderful time having this conversation with you. I think right now you've superseded yourself in your goals and what you're attaining, the way you shaped, your mentality, your physicality, everything. So here's a goal for us in 2 or 3 or maybe 2032, just so we can round out 20 years. That by the time we get to then, that we will have had individually, respectively, another run at doing anything related to WWE. I think that
I
would be
love it.
a goal. Let's manifest that. In 6 years from
Yes.
now, we will have had another run, another anything related to WWE. I think that could be cool.
I love it. I love it. Yes, I'm 100% down.
So Celeste, thank you so much again for the interview. It's been a lovely time talking to you. And here's hoping that you come to Portugal. So think about that too.
Yes, I will. Thank you so much for having me. I've loved this conversation.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful. Thanks, Celeste.